obviously, we will address the elephant in the room, no pun intended. We are huge supporters of India Walton. She should be the new mayor of Buffalo. This particular circumstance of the deliberate sabotage within the party infrastructure that was laid at her feet and ultimately sandbagged her out of the mayoralty
That was
position.
A statewide assassination against her, right? Like that wasn't just Buffalo Democrats.
But that ultimately comes to one person, and that man's name is Jay Jacobs. That was the first time I knew of him, but I didn't really, pay as much attention to all the wheelings and dealings of the things that he did. Obviously, he probably had a very heavy hand in what went down with Cuomo, among other things, but he definitely was probably as responsible as anybody as ensuring that India lost that race, as I'm sure he does a lot of things to ensure that a lot of the things that need to be happening in the state of New York, because New York, while it is one Democratic state, it's a very economic populist state. People are demanding things. New York's New York Health Act, I think we would both agree, it's probably the closest statewide universal healthcare system in the country right now in terms of the momentum that's there.
Viability.
And so what this man has been doing from a Floridian's perspective is deliberately sabotaging the economic progressive uprising that is happening in the city and throughout the state that has been happening since Alex's victory in 2018. And I guess they are doing everything in their capacity to try to fight it off. So from your perspective, how does Jay Jacobs fall into all of these things that have been transpiring over the last few years?
Well, I would say that he falls squarely in the center of all of it, because all you have to do is go back to 2017 and 18, when myself and a handful of others decided that we were going to have primary challenges to state senators that were elected as Democrats, but actually went to Albany and caucused with Republicans. And that was this coalition of individuals called the IDC, and they were essentially blessed, so to speak, by Jay Jacobs, the chair of the Democratic Party, and our former governor, Andrew Cuomo. Now, that power dynamic meant effectively that the Democrats in the state Senate, up until 2018, did not have the majority that they should have had, because numerically there were enough Democrats. But these 8 Democrats decided to break away and caucus with Republicans. It prevented New York from being able to codify Roe, to pass housing rights, to pass climate justice legislation, to do all of the things that New Yorkers believed that were important to them. However, behind the scenes, these were things that were, again, allowed because of our former governor and also because of the power dynamics of New York. There's relics of Tammany Hall. And so that was my first introduction to Jay Jacobs. Now, when I won my election in 2018 and then went to Albany in 2019, myself and many others never had a meeting or even an introduction to Jay Jacobs, if you can imagine. And just fast forward to 2022, the year that we're in right now, I still, to this day, and many others of my colleagues as well, even Congressmember Adriano Espaillat, who has been in office for way longer than I have, has never even had a meeting or met with Jay Jacobs, the chair, again, of the Democratic Party. So then now, right after 2018 elections, you have the you have a majority in the state Senate. Finally, the Democrats are in control and we start passing bills. And 2021 comes around the corner. And what happens is we have a lot of different ballot initiatives that are important for increasing and expanding voting access and voting rights, in addition to the fact that we have lots of elections going on. We have county executive races and DA's races. And we also have, notably, as you mentioned, the mayor's race in Buffalo with India Walton. And what we saw in 2021, I feel like, was the setting of the table of what we could have expected to happen in 2022. We saw, number one, India Walton, this progressive, build incredible amounts of power to be able to win a primary against the previous mayor of Buffalo. And yet when she won, the Democrats, led by Jay Jacobs, did not only not support India Walton in her general election, they campaigned for a write-in election for the previous mayor, defeating India Walton in the general. In addition to the fact that on those ballot initiatives to have early voting, automatic voter registration, to change the redistricting process, which is a complete mess in New York, we not only lost all of those ballot initiatives, but the Democratic Party in the state of New York, led again by Jay Jacobs, did not spend a single dollar on even raising awareness. And why that matters specifically and why I hone in on that is because the Republican Party spent millions of dollars trying to defeat it. And you couldn't really go anywhere outside of the city without seeing yard signs or hearing radio ads telling people to vote no on these particular ballot initiatives. The last thing that I think is of importance here, specifically with 2021, is that Jay Jacobs, again, the state party chair in New York, also happens to be the chair of the Nassau Democratic Party. Now, why that matters is because Nassau County is, again, a suburb of New York City, and it's a place where in 2018, Democrats flipped lots of seats there to really have a Democratic stronghold. However, in 2021, the Democrats elections, the DA's race, the county executive's race, but it because, again, the Democrats not only didn't have infrastructure, but Jay Jacobs, as the individual party, did not have any kind of coordinated campaign. There was no coordinated organizing efforts. There were no coordinated fundraising efforts. And even though we can really do, in the dissection of why this happened, we can really lead back to, again, the reasons I just mentioned. The reality here is basically that we have a man who not only doesn't want to help Democrats to win, but he frankly is doing everything he can to undermine Democrats from winning.
That sounds like our party. Like that really sounds like our state party. It's really interesting. Yeah, but you know what? When I hear this, it really does sound like, World Wrestling. And it's every legislative body seems to have, okay, you guys are going to be the bad guys on this bill, but ultimately we don't want anything to really get done. So you'll be bad, we'll be, and yet we know that it's all roads lead to the same corporate donors.
That's right.
It's very, very clear. Like if there weren't corporate donors, then they wouldn't care so much about suppressing what people wanted.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that because in New York, real estate is a huge, huge part of why either certain initiatives, whether it's legislative or a back of the ballot initiatives, will succeed or fail. And in the same vein, same with the healthcare industry, depending upon who and what you're talking about. There are particular reasons why the New York Health Act, for example, haven't passed, but especially when it comes to these kinds of elections, we have a real estate industry which is used to having a very large stronghold across the entire state, still very bitter with the laws that we passed in 2019, which was the first time in 40 years that we passed laws to protect tenants. And so it really is unfortunate because when you think about what so many progressives, especially, I really appreciated the fact that you didn't use that word because I think sometimes it does make people turn their ears off. So I hope that people continue to listen to what I'm about to say here. But progressives are fighting for working people. And when you think about why is the Democratic Party losing hold of so many parts of this country, even though we have John Fetterman, thank goodness, winning Pennsylvania in the US Senate, and you have other candidates like him who are actually talking to working class individuals and speaking to their needs, the Democratic Party has become incredibly run by corporate interests. As a result of that, they have lost touch with the reason that they actually exist and the values that they say that they stand for. And that's a huge part of why, when we think about why are we losing or why are these races closer than we really would feel comfortable with, like the governor's race, she only won by 6 percentage points. That's incredibly close and frankly dangerously close as we round the bend to a 2024 presidential election. So I think that we have to take a step back and also look at the things that are working and what's not working. And in New York, what is not working and hasn't been working for a long time is that we really don't have any kind of infrastructure to really withstand a series of elections that will allow us to continue to have power for working people. And when you lose touch with that, I think that you lose touch with why anybody would, feel like they could have hope in the Democratic Party. And I think that's why you see a lot of people who previously may have voted for Democrats, not only not voting, but voting for Republicans simply because they want change and they don't know how else to have their voices be heard on that particular topic.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.